are central, and we are recentering the voice of people of color throughout this entire program. And we are trying to do something different and something better. And I could talk on and on about what this program is. And I want to say that to these students who are here, you have an opportunity, a unique opportunity to really change the dialogue and change the work and change what's happening in the world of education. Again, it's just my pleasure, I think, coming together and having a conversation. And then long after the protests are over, long after the energy and excitement, we as educators have to still be in the room continuously doing the work. And that's what this is. This is a moment for us to, you know, things are beginning to die down a bit, but we got to keep doing the work, stay with the same energy we had as always, and continue to educate and uplift. So I'm here. I'm looking forward to what you guys have put together, and especially grateful and proud, if I can say, almost like a parent of the folks who have come together, of our graduate students for taking the lead on this. Thank you. I'll hand it back to you, Dr. Jazz.
Thank you so much.
Right.
There we go. All right, so then we'll have Dr. Lathan will give us a little next.
All right. I just want to say, I too am very grateful to see such a great body of collective people from all over, not just DLT, but I'm happy to see people from different programs, also from different schools. And I too thank you for attending this very important forum. And I want to share a special thanks to, first of all, our students as well, and PhD in Education for Social Justice. These guys have been phenomenal, our first cohort, and they have set the bar. And they have challenged us. We have challenged them. We are learning together. We're pushing each other to higher heights and to be better. And this is what the program is all about. And we hope that the impact of this forum will push all of us to be better. I want to say special thanks to our chair, Dr. Gazada, for being here as always, and his support throughout this whole entire process. Dr. Joy for her vision, first of all, for us to be able to have this forum that started with our social justice PhD program. And I have to give a special thanks to my colleague, Dr. Rebecca Jazz. She worked hand in hand with me to make sure that we can do our due diligence on trying to provide a forum that will help impact all of us. So the purpose of this forum is to create a safe space of dialogue on issues that we as a people and also as a nation have been silent on far too long. I always say now, I look at it as our silence has put us in this place by not having the courage or the opportunity to dialogue. The silence kills. So this is one of the opportunities I look at to break the silence. And also, this forum is an opportunity to build a learning community, to first educate ourselves and others about people of color, not only their struggles, but also their successes. And we're not only going to focus on current issues, but we're going to do our part as educators, that ones that we say we pledge to social justice, to do our part to educating ourselves and others about how we all can be better at making sure that everyone is treated in a humane way. So one of the things that I'll share quickly, and I'm going to move forward, is a quick that I'm going to share in our art salon that's going to be coming up, the ongoing action plan items that we put together. There was a quick video and a picture that I shared, and it was a picture of me in 8th grade, and I was on the basketball team. And on the basketball team, I was the only Black person on the team. And so if I was the only Black person on the team, on the basketball team, you can only imagine I was the only Black person in the classroom, right? But what had happened was, it was an experience that I'm grateful to have had, because what it did is it put me in a space and in a place to not listen to what people told me, but to get an opportunity to experience it for myself. So there were, of course, many racial things that I had to endure, but there were so many good people that I had met that even if I wanted to hate white people, there were certain people that I had met that wouldn't allow me to. So I encourage anyone and everyone, if you don't understand people, put yourself in a place where you are the only one. Then and only then will you really understand some of the people's struggle. So that is my challenge, and this is a start to a great start. And I thank you for this time and for listening. And we're going to now move forward to Dr. Jez, and she will take us on.
All right, thank you. Michelle Coleman was going to say a few words as well.
Excellent, excellent.
Thank you, Dr. Jez.
You're echoing. Do you have two devices
items
on at the same time, maybe? There we go.
Yes, there we go.
Okay. Are you with us? We can't hear you if you are.
Hold on for 1 second.
All right. How we doing, Michelle?
I'm trying.
Oh, wow. Gotta love the Zoom, right? There's always gonna be something. Yeah, good thing we all understand Zoom and the technology. Right. It should come together here.
Okay, is that better?
Well, you're still reverbing. There's a device that you have to cut one of the volume all the way down. And then you're going to be able to get what you need. Okay. Ready to test? Oh, wow.
I can also try that. I just muted yours, and so you can try from the other one if you want to unmute and try again.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
There we go.
There we go. We got it.
All right, I apologize for that. Good evening, sorry again, and welcome. My name is Michelle Coleman, and I am proud to be a student here at USD and a representative of the first doctoral cohort in education for social justice at the University of San Diego. I would like to take this time, if I could, to really thank Dr. Spencer, Dr. Latham, Dr. Jez, all of our professors that we had this year, all the late nights, the cries, the camaraderie has been worth it, because you have pushed all of us to a growth mindset, and for us to really start to challenge ourselves about what it means to be a thinker, a creator, and a person who wants to really be a change agent for social justice. We would like, once again, to thank each of you for joining us tonight for a night of insight, reflection, and critical dialogue. Please let us engage in conversation on how we can work as individuals and as a network to combat systematic and institutional racism, police brutality, and inequities in education. As we usher into a space of collective change on the eve of Juneteenth, please let us remember two things. Number one, we are not free until we are all free. And freedom is only a word if it is not followed by action and collective commitment. And two, let us always say the names of those who were assaulted and or murdered by police and other judicial systems, policy, and practices. Thank you.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Thank you so much. All right, so actually, can you go back one, I think? The video, did you take that one out, or?
No, we didn't get to the video yet. There we go. All right.
Okay. All right. So we wanted to make sure to kind of ground bring attention to the fact that it's Juneteenth, and we realize that not everybody knows what Juneteenth is. So we have a short video that we're hoping we'll be able to play for you so that we can get a little idea. So did you want to start that?
All right. Okay, let's do it. I'm gonna.
It looks like it's kind of delayed. So
Okay, let me stop it. I'm gonna, 1 second. Let me go to the back. The video, you can see the video, correct? Just want to check, and I'm gonna make it big. How are we doing?
Looks like it's big, so let's check.
All right, let's do it.
The sound works, but the sound, we are not getting the sound.
Oh, you know what? I'm gonna stop because I have to put sound on. That's why you probably don't hear it. So let me stop my share, and then we're gonna save the sound and optimize. Okay. Now we're gonna work. Here we go.
Thank you.
The history books have glorified Abraham Lincoln and the Emancipation Proclamation for freeing slaves. But if we're being real, it only applied to slaves who lived near Union lines, where they could flee his or her plantation or take advantage of opportunities in the North. Around 500,000 Black people managed to do this. These Black people freed themselves. Juneteenth, or June 19th, is a powerful moment in Black history, dating back to June 19, 1865, the day Union soldiers led by Major General Gordon Granger went into Galveston, Texas, with news that the Civil War was over and Texas's 250,000 slaves were now officially free. Yes! 1865, that's a whole 2.5 years after Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation. In those 2 years, Black people's newfound freedom was rejected by white people. But General Granger bossed up and issued an order to the people of Texas proclaiming all slaves are free. This involves an absolute equality of personal rights and rights of property between former masters and slaves. And the connection heretofore existing between them becomes that between employer and hired labor. And Juneteenth was born. Our Independence Day, our July 4th. Of course, it wasn't black and white like that. We weren't free. They just announced it. This new freedom sparked a violent backlash from white people. Surprise! Former Confederate soldiers, still in uniform and with guns, intimidated Black people, continuing a new form of slavery. They did this by murdering, lynching, and harassing the freed slaves. Hashtag Reconstruction era. But we are a resilient people. None of their intimidation tactics could stop our ancestors from accepting and celebrating their freedom. And they celebrated defiantly because you know white people were hating. The first public Juneteenth event took place in 1866. Former slaves read the Emancipation Proclamation, something pretty gangster to do in the 1860s South. They also sang spirituals and played games. The freed men and women of Texas took their celebrations wherever they went. Los Angeles, Oakland, Seattle, Chicago, Virginia, you name it. By the 20th century, the Jim Crow laws were in full effect. Freedom started to feel like a foreign concept, and Juneteenth celebrations didn't happen as often. But the fight to freedom had to continue. The Poor People's March of 1968 brought new life into the holiday. In 1980, Texas recognized it as a state holiday. And in 1997, Congress recognized June 19th as Juneteenth Independence Day. It's been over 150 years since the first Juneteenth. Isn't it time Juneteenth became a national holiday? It could be the blackest holiday ever. Barbecues, music, dancing, a celebration of being free Black men and women. June 19th is not just about freedom, but the fight of our ancestors, the determination, and the consideration that one day their children, their children's children, and their children's children's children would be free.
All right. Beautiful, beautiful.
Thank you so much. Now we're going to have Maisha is going to go through our circle norms. So when we get into our groups, our norms. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Jazz. My name is Maisha Wiggum, and I recently finished my first year in our amazing PhD program at USD. And before we engage in our conversations in our breakout rooms, I want to remind everyone of our circle norms. And one that is to listen with intentionality. So listen more than you speak, and be okay with awkward silences. Remember, we're here to listen, learn, and reflect. Also, share authentically and share from the heart. When you have the floor, this is your opportunity to speak, and we want to hear what you have to say. Remember to use I statements. It's your narrative, it's your story, it's your floor, it's your platform. Respect confidentiality. We want to be respectful and to make sure our narratives do not leave the circle. Be mindful of time so that all can share, and help carry others as they process. We know that this is very important and an intentional work, and we can be here for longer than an hour and a half, but this is the time slot in our platform. So we want to be mindful of our time. And recognize that this is unfinished work. And we're happy to have you here. We're happy for all of you to be a part of this life-changing experience. And I'm going to turn it back to Dr. Jazz.
Awesome.
Thank you so much. All right, so now we're going to get into our breakout groups. And our idea was that we would be, well, one, we'll have our group facilitators, and there should be a facilitator in each one of the groups. And just a reminder to facilitators, we have some guiding questions in the notes section of the slide deck. If I have made a mistake, then I will be checking the rooms and clearing that up as quickly as possible. And without further ado, I will move you into your groups.
All right. And I would say to the facilitators, we have a nice document that you could use to help facilitate your conversations that is located in the link that Dr. Jez shared. Okay, we coming back together.
Yes. Slowly but surely.
Hi, Dr. Jez. I got kicked out.
The job is bringing people out of groups, I think.
Let's see. And let's see. So Kamala, you are okay with what you have and what we prepared to do? Just want to make sure you all set. You're gonna just show the screen? Yeah.
Dr. Lincoln, where am I putting the picture?
Oh, yeah, okay. She might need, she won't have access to that.
You're right. Let's see. I would like to, if
you put it in the chat, I could throw it to your slide.
All right. Can you copy and paste and throw it in the chat?
Sure.
Okay.
Just type it into the chat.
Yeah. If you already, can you copy and paste without typing? That would be great. If you could copy and paste.
Okay.
Okay. All right. We'll go towards the end. That way that'll give you a chance to go ahead and and you don't have to put everything, just the bulk of it.
Okay, great.
Okay. All right, Rebecca, Dr. Jez, back to you.
Yes, if we can make sure to mute your microphones just so we don't get any feedback. But I wanted to say thank you so much. I know our intention was to create smaller groups so that we could really have some good discussion. I know I popped into one of the groups, and I won't call anyone out, but he was like, I didn't really plan on talking today, but because this group is so small, I guess I will share. And that's actually one of the powerful pieces that we were really trying to allow to happen, because a lot of times we can be passive observers, and we, in order for movement to happen, grassroots movement to happen, then we need movement, we need conversation, we need dialogue, and then we need action. If you wouldn't mind going to, well, there was no group one, I closed the group one, but would you go to group 2 at the end of the slide deck? To the next year. Oh, and group 2, I didn't take a screenshot. Can oh, I do know who. Zulema, you guys for group 2. Can you share a little bit?
Oh, sure. Just to kind of summarize what we sort of put on there. Okay.
Yeah.
So we just, I mean, we talked a lot about lots of different things. We were kind of addressing many topics, but something that we sort of stood out was the whole Juneteenth, knowledge around Juneteenth, and how this idea of just because we don't know it, this idea of not knowing something, does that mean it doesn't exist? And just sort of, you know, the ideas around like, oh, the privilege of just saying, well, I don't know it, it doesn't exist, therefore I can just continue, you know, compartmentalizing the other and not really know that it's happening. So that was one of the things. And then the other idea of how we've known what we need to do, we know what the right thing to do is, why haven't we done it yet? And that was one of the other things that we discussed. And then more about this particular activity and just really appreciating the space to have these kinds of interactions, and about building new learning and understanding through this process. And then about hope, given the recent Supreme Court decision. So kind of we left it on a really nice positive note, and very hopeful and heartened by recent events.
Thank you so much. Joseph, I think if you refresh your PowerPoint, then the notes will show up, because I see that they actually did have the notes on.
All right, let's do that.
So you may just need to do that. Okay, the next group was Gabriel's group.
Yes, hello. I'm going to introduce Henna first, and she wanted to share a little bit, and then we could talk a little bit more about what we talked about.
Was that group 3?
Yes, group 3.
Gotcha, buddy.
Hi, thanks, Gabriel. So we talked about a bunch of stuff. For me personally, a big part was, I'm from England. I was born and raised there. I moved here like 6 years ago. A big part of being in England and being in America was having to hide a huge part of my identity. I'm Indian Muslim, and in England I didn't wear a headscarf, and I often
All right, did she freeze?
I think so. I think she's frozen.
Darn it. I'll speak a little more and hopefully she'll come right back on. We were just, you know, her story really is a reflection of folks of color, especially right now, Black folks, having to hide part of themselves, right? Having to act differently in public spaces for to be safer, right? For reasons of safety. And we talked a little bit about, I know in organizing this event, we talked a little bit about wanting to really protect our future generations from having to learn how to do that, having to learn about having to have that fear of, am I safe just being myself? A few of the other things we did talk about was, you know, I think Sulema kind of spoke a little bit to it about white privilege, really having, part of white privilege is not having to think about racism, right? Being able to take a break or not having to even really deal with it. And then we started really thinking about, you know, what are some of the ways that we can infuse Black Lives Matter, anti-racist work in all of our educational settings, in any class we're giving? What does that look like, and what would that look like?
Thank you. All right, Raquetta, group 4.
Hi, we talked about a lot of different things. The first question was just give a word that comes to mind from watching the Juneteenth video, and these were the words selected: evocative, unknown, American, unfinished. And evocative because of the emotion felt, unknown because so much of our history is not taught in your K-12 environment, and a lot of us will discover it in college or later on in life. And American because the mention was, it took, of course it took 2 years in order for slaves to know that they were free, and unfinished because this is not the end of the story and there's still more work to do. I appreciated one challenge that was thrown out by, I didn't ask permission in advance if I could say names, so I'm not going to say names unless either any of you would like to chime in. But the challenge that was thrown out was, you know, there's so many people that are just kind of retweeting a lot of what others are saying, and is that really truly how you're living your life as well? Do you live the life that you do you live the narrative that you share to the world with the world? And this was specifically on social media. And so the challenge is to reflect on that and to really have that journey and that internal battle and try to continue with the work to then follow it up with action. Which is the next bullet point, which is half the battle is internal, and everyone is at a different point. And that's okay, as long as you're still having that discussion, that battle. And there were a lot of stories personal stories that were shared about either the violation of human rights or just upbringing and just not necessarily knowing certain things around until you grow up and you realize that the world is not as it seemed, or it's not the same everywhere, or certain things have trends have kind of stay the same within any group or ethnicity or culture. I know that was very vague, but the big part I think that we really addressed was we do want to continue the conversations. We do want to continue the discussions. We do want to let our voice and be heard and be represented. But a lot of it then has to be followed with action. And that's one of the things, at least when we address the statement that was shared by the department, that it was very important and very good that it was shared with some action steps. And the other thing is, a lot of us will work in silos, and this was addressing the different departments at USD as well. We each have different statements, which is not a bad thing. It's a great thing to be able to share statements. But if we're doing all of the same work, then it would be important to come together as well and to share in that work and to have that action together. And one of the things that was shared is that the Multicultural Committee at USD also has a lot of action plans that they would love to be able to collaborate on.
All right, thank you so much. Group 5, which was Mario.
First, I just want to give gratitude to the individuals that were in our space and shared. I think we all thematically are still wrestling with how we're internalizing everything that is happening, how we can actually make changes in our institution, in our communities, in our organizations that we work with. And then it's also the theme of we need to actually also have self-care and heal, while actively disrupting and being actively anti-racist. They mentioned, everyone mentioned the initial statement as a great start and call to action, especially there was a lot of props given to the Souls department in general. I think the feel of community, the feel of belonging was a thing that kept resonating for people, as well as we had new students in the space who were mentioning just even reading that statement and thinking about their experiences in K through 12 and undergrad and other institutions, nothing has been stated. So it's just coming into the space of all right, we can actually lead and impact other departments, because other departments were mentioned around in USD of what can we critically do to impact those as lead, not just from the statement, but actually lead through action in what we're doing. In furthering our work, I really appreciated this challenge of we thought about the statement really focused on this, but what else can we be doing with the institution itself? And it's how do we critically analyze? So interrogate every aspect of who we are as an institution, from the admissions process to what curriculum's being offered to all students. Are we actually utilizing student experience voices in all our decision making? Are professors utilizing guest speakers? Because there is knowledge gained by, valid community members that have been doing this work in creating advocacy and knowledge throughout our spaces. And then also do we have names of buildings of people we actually don't align with, or funders or things in those capacities as an institution. So I think it was really cool to see of those are just very simple steps of are we asking the right questions of every space? Who is this institution really benefiting in the long run, and why? And then lastly, I think this kept coming up as a theme of like this circle and conversation has been needed at USD. And I like what I mentioned too is like, I don't want it just to be a task, right? Like we're not just crossing something off and like, oh yeah, we did that, cool, we're done. It's like the journey continues, and how do we keep this going so that there is momentum of actual collective change.
Wow. Powerful, powerful. We're hearing some very powerful share out, guys. I'm loving this. I'm loving this. All right. I don't have anything for 6, Dr. Jazz.
Adon, that was Adon's group. And I think Joy, oh, go ahead.
Sorry, I didn't get the right notes. I mentioned to my group, I'm dealing with something personal here, but I'm still, committed to this. I just didn't have time to write everything, but I did write some notes. When we started off in the prompt, and anyone in the group, feel free to join us, Dr. Spencer and everybody else that was in the group. But what we talked about first was kind of like the dilution of certain like events and movements in American history from minority groups, particularly our, Black citizens in the United States. So, I mentioned how like Juneteenth, it's something that isn't necessarily taught, and how other events like Cinco de Mayo, St. Patrick's Day, all these events that are experienced in the American consciousness as like party holidays are kind of diluted for the original message. And when you come, excuse me? Sorry, I thought I heard someone say.
No, go ahead and continue.
And when you confront, like white Americans about this, sometimes they get defensive, when you're trying to educate. Another thing that then we discussed was about like kind of like the hope that we had, and what we also discussed, like movements, we were kind of like what Gabriel mentioned, about like the spaces in that we have, and we actually talked to Dr. Spencer, and I even mentioned about like we talked about the movie. Have you guys seen the movie Get Out, and how some minorities experience that microaggression, and Jordan Peele was able to kind of like capture that. And Dr. Spencer mentioned when discussing her mortgage, she's working on all of this information, and yet she's still dealing with microaggressions herself. Dr. Spencer used the terminology saying like, she made it, she's paying off her mortgage, she's doing all these things, and yet, as an individual, she's still dealing with these microaggressions. So we kind of came up with that connection, like even in the mainstream media, we're seeing these, and when you see it from a double-sided like perspective, like as a Hispanic man, and I feel these microaggressions, like you're having to kind of constantly navigate through systems, not only like in our daily lives, even where I work as a teacher, like still being a teacher of color, it's still like this navigation of like, I had to present myself to my coworkers, I had to present myself to parents, I had to present myself as sort of as a form of like, as someone that can appease people. And one of the questions I asked them is, at what point is being, and I asked and the group discussed was, at what point is being compliant in this system good enough? Like, at what point does being compliant gonna help us? And because it hasn't in the past. So if in the past we've been compliant, and it's still killing people, it's still putting people in prisons, it's still making people lose jobs, then what's the point of always being compliant when you can't always be you're not taking care of a system that is usually built to support and take care of white affluent Americans rather than everybody in the United States.
Thank you. I did try to take a few notes to help you out, because I do know that life is difficult to juggle at times. So thank you so much.
Powerful.
Jennifer.
Hi, everyone. So we, our group of 4, we were cross-departmental, and I want to give a shout out to Dr. Estrada for bringing in the trauma piece into our discussion. So I'm going to have Dr. Estrada share what we discussed.
Awesome. Okay.
Let me unmute first step.
There you go.
We are small but mighty, and yes. the first issue that came up was Juneteenth like, what is that? I never heard of that. I'm we're educated people. We were never taught about that, right, in school. And so we had quite a discussion about that. And we also talked about how important it is to dismantle the master narratives of American history with counter narratives, right? One example that I didn't talk about was just the idea that Rosa Parks, right, was this feeble woman who was tired, and she decided to sit down, in the bus because she was tired. Well, she wasn't feeble. She wasn't tired. She was 42 years old, and it was an act of protest. And she came from a family that had quite a bit of political, might and political arms, etc. So really, it's really the real narrative, but it has to be a counter narrative because there's so many other stories out there. And I shared that I was very refreshed and reassured and hopeful. And when I read the DLT document, and that it really does, in my opinion, lead the way for souls. And I thank all of my colleagues. I could see how thorough, how the research and the effort that went into it, and the PhD students as well, and whoever else was involved in that. I was just really moved to tears to read it. And we had quite a bit of a discussion about when we go back to opening schools, whether they're K-12 or higher ed, how are we going to address this moment? How are teachers or professors going to talk to their students and talk with their students really about this? We can't go back to police brutality and violence and all the racism that's everywhere right now. And there's the statement that there's no neutrality in racism. We thought that was a very important statement that emerged in our conversations. And also, who's going to hold the teachers that are trying to have this conversation with their students, who have parents that don't want the conversation at all? So how do we hold on to, teaching? Dr. Spencer said teaching is political, and to embrace that, and how do we uphold or embrace critical social justice pedagogy in the midst of that? Some of us talked about how will we address and move through this moment in our summer courses at USD, right? So how do we hold on to that? And we talked about the trauma that our students are experiencing, that we are experiencing, that gets reenacted in social media, if you watch the news, if you're marching, etc. And so how are we going to be trauma informed in our teaching, in our counseling, which is the department I'm in, and how are we going to move forward with that in an evidence-based and sensitive manner? And we all agreed that, before I say the last point, I want to say that the conversation also emerged with this image of one of our members growing up, right, from a culturally diverse immigrant background, but growing up next to a Confederate flag, a neighbor who flew the Confederate flag right next to her home in her neighborhood home in her, those critical growing up years. So the question of who's American and who's not, who's included, who's excluded, who's human and who's not. So we got into quite a bit of discussion about that I found very moving in the beginning. And then finally, we all agreed that the work continues. It's in progress. It's not completed. It's not done. And so I would call out to the other members of the group if there's something that you want to add.
It was a beautiful summary of our time together. Thank you, Dr. Estrada.
Yes, Paul did a very nice job. Thank you.
Wow, great job. Great job. Yes. Group 8?
That's you.
Oh, all right. Thank you.
Tabula rasa.
Well, I'm privileged. I want to introduce one of our newest addition to the PhD program. I was privileged to have two of our new admits to the PhD program in my group. What a great time. So we have Emily over here, that's you may see. She is new to the PhD. She's been joining us in the fall. And then we have Kamala, who is going to be our spokesperson for us. So Kamala, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. So we had a very rich discussion in our group with Dr. Lathan, Emily, Heather, and Scott. And we talked about where we see ourselves as educators in this whole discussion, dialogue experience that our nation is having right now. And we talked about the importance of modeling transparency, that these are difficult discussions that we're having. And it doesn't serve anyone well to say things that we think other people want to hear, but the importance of saying what our experience is and being transparent and risking a little bit in that honesty and that vulnerability. We also talked about curriculum choices with our students, how we can redesign curriculum, the intentionality that we take and the choices that we make, how often and the process in which we involve our students in choosing that curriculum and how they can be a part of that process of negotiating what is important and how they can show up in the process of their own education in that way, and really looking for ways to be intentional in including culturally relevant curriculum choices and being mindful of our pedagogy, that it is relevant, culturally relevant. We also talked about the importance of nights like tonight, where we are listening more than we're speaking and participating in that dialogue, bringing ourselves to it, but also listening to what other people have to say. And then we also talked about how Juneteenth needs to be a national holiday, that it's nice to talk about it for a day, but unless we give it some real estate in places that matter, that we're not really acknowledging it as maybe it should be. So hopefully that's around the corner for our nation. Hopefully that will be soon, where we recognize it as a national holiday. We also talked about what brings us hope, and certainly the Supreme Court decisions this week were causes to be hopeful. This conversation tonight, just meeting with colleagues and people in our community and having these discussions, making the time for this. Dr. Lathan mentioned that, having more than just one group invested in this fight, that it's not just a Black struggle or an immigrant struggle or anything like that, but that we're all recognizing that we all have to fight for one another. And I think just having demonstrations in all 50 states and around the world, that's an incredible source of hope to know that it's not just an isolated event, but technology is letting us see that there are a lot more people invested in this cause. Scott gave us the really cool idea that the destruction that we are looking at could be a form of creation. That was something interesting to just think about, that the dismantling and what looks like destruction could be the beginnings of something new being created, and that we get to have a hand in that. I think that was it, unless someone else wants to add something.
No, it's been excellent. Well said. This is why she is a part of our program, guys. Great job. Great job. I'm very proud. Yes, yes.
And I tried to capture it, but feel free to edit the slide as you
I just want to share one thing though. I shared my experience at the beginning about being the only person in the room. And I asked each one of them, have everyone in the group, or has anyone in the group had a chance to experience that? And they all had a story. And it was so amazing to hear how they all experienced, from a religious, from a linguistic perspective, from so many perspectives, of being the only one in the room. So we found that really meaningful. And I just want to say, we have a gentleman that's outside our community. His name is Scott Irwin, who's an administrator invited by Michelle, I believe. And what an amazing guy. We want to definitely welcome him to our community. And this is what it's all about. Reaching outside of USD, making sure that we make a world change, not just a local change. So thank you all. Back to you, Dr. Jazz.
Thank you, Dr. Latham. I just want to clarify, thank you very much, that we were invited by Maisha Wiggum, who, by the way, runs an outstanding circle.
Thank you for that clarification. Thank you, Maisha.
All right, thanks, Maisha. All right, Kelly. All right, so I have a confession to make first, and I know we're running short on time, so I will be really quick in our share out. I got so excited to have the conversation with my group that I didn't even allow them to introduce themselves to each other. That is horrible. That is the worst thing that anyone could ever do, and I did that as a 15-year teacher. So I want to apologize to them. I was at least smart enough to introduce myself, but I entirely messed that up. There was USD faculty and students as well, and we just had a wonderful conversation. We talked about the fact that people were very appreciative of the statement, the fact that it's centered around those that were most affected by what's happening, that it called out white supremacy ideology as the real problem, as the cause, and that we took the time to kind of define those terms. That was something that they thought was really important. People appreciated the fact that we were having this forum, the Juneteenth video, that we were learning from each other, listening to one another, but also acknowledging that we need to have a much larger and greater understanding of our history and how our historical context has kind of led us to where we are at today. Let's see, we had someone share some amazing work that she was doing at her school site, but one of the things that they figured out is that it was really challenging to have educators talking about racial injustice with their students when they themselves really didn't understand it. And so one of the decisions they made as a school site was that we have to start with the educators, and they've been working on that. And so we thought that was really important and insightful. Also that there's a lot of hope out there, especially in young people, right? That they tend to be much more open-minded than and perhaps people of older generations, although obviously not necessarily, but that's something to get excited about. People talked about the need to educate oneself, right? That a lot of people have been really doing a lot of reading and viewing and just really trying to understand themselves and our own positionality in the society. And then Michelle popped in and she asked a brilliant question, which is like, how do we move this work into our community and into our work? How do we do that outside of the space of education at USD? So people talked about that. They talked about being more than an ally, that we needed to be co-conspirators, and that these types of conversations that we're having today eventually need to just become natural, right? Like we need to be able to talk about these types of things with our friends and at the dinner table and whatnot. We also had someone bring up the importance of not just talking about racism, but that we really need to be having conversations about the connection to capitalism. And I think they were satisfied that I let them know that that is certainly something that we address in the PhD program and that I feel fortunate to be a part of that. And then we ended with just the fact that this moment that we're living right now does feel different, and that we got to build on it. We got to capitalize on the momentum and move forward. And then I think in the notes section of the slide, we listed some resources that we thought were helpful. And then there were some suggestions for how our group can kind of take the work forward. So I'll leave those out, but they're there in the notes section. Thank you so much. And by the way, we will be sending out the slide deck to everybody who RSVP'd. Maisha's group, I know that there were some connectivity issues.
Hi.
Can you hear me? There you are. Okay.
Yes.
Yes. Sorry about that. And I'll keep it quick because I lost my computer connection because I'm at Panera. So our group didn't get a chance to write our responses on the Google Doc, but we will add our responses because I know we're going to share them with all the attendees. But we started our discussion with an appreciation for this platform, the statement and the action plan. We also saw that there were some connections to systematic racism and the caste system in India and capitalism in American democracy. And then we also thought it was important to, when we're having these conversations about racism, Black Lives Matter, how do we build relationships to continue this conversation so it's not just a one-shot deal? How do we have these conversations with our students and colleagues? And then what steps are we taking to move it to the next level? So there was definitely a deep appreciation on the fact that we are not just having this town hall meeting, but we're also having the book club, and we're having the art salon. And Laura in our group also brought up a very great, recommended a documentary from Netflix. And if Laura can jump on and kind of share her thoughts about the documentary 13, that would be great. And that kind of sums up our group discussions for group 10.
Sure, thanks, Maisha. Yeah, I was mentioning, I guess the last group brought it up a bit too, but the connection between capitalism and racism, and the issue of like corporate lobbying and tweedism, and kind of this idea that our democracy is no longer a democracy. And it can tackle really any issue, but the way the documentary 13th on Netflix, I highly recommend it, kind of gives us an example of how it tackles racism, is like the mass incarceration of African Americans, and how groups like ALEC are kind of funded by these big corporations that are kind of exploiting prison workers to make them more articles of clothing, like for JCPenney or Victoria's Secret as such. There's another TED Talk as well by Larry Lessig, who touches more about tweedism, and it's really good. I'd love to share the link in the chat. But yeah.
Thank you.
Awesome.
And I took a few notes on the on your slide, but
okay,
edit just to kind of capture some of it.
Mm-hmm.
All right, our last group is Aaron and Reyes. We're in that group.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Quezada and Aaron.
Okay. I know Aaron led it, so
okay,
you're on, Aaron.
I appreciate it. Well, I definitely want to start by saying that I introduced myself also, and then got straight into the conversational pieces. But overall, thank you all for being in the group and contributing great dialogue. I'm just going to go piece by piece, person by person, and some of the takeaways. Alexis, who seemed to have specialty or familiarity with trauma-informed care, spoke about that component, as well as being disappointed for not necessarily being taught the specifics until a later time. Jasmine, who we found out was calling in from Shanghai, she had to go, but she wanted to, or she highlighted how she advocates even, thousands of miles away, but for example, she was giving an example about particular Asians who would never have got that type of what I'm guessing like redirection to a certain degree. So I appreciated that. Michelle, who is a principal, I forget the school, but it was in Logan. She had a great concept. And if I butcher this, just unmute and just tell me to shut up. She said opportunity precedes achievement. And pretty much what she was doing as a principal was making systemic changes within her school to allow opportunities instead of requiring like an A or some sort of prerequisite class to have maybe like AP opportunities or advanced opportunities. And then finally with Dr. Quezada, I appreciated his conversation with Michelle about how to just, I think the word you used was efficiently navigate the reopening processes for schools, not only for the K-12, but also at the collegiate level. So what does that look like in the new school environment? I appreciated all those points. Anybody else want to chime in? hopefully that was a decent summary when we look on the slides.
Well said. Well said.
Thank you. All right, thank you. If we can go to slide 9, and I know you guys were on slide 1, so you are in there, right? Okay, so we just wanted to make an announcement. We've got a few announcements on slide 9. You can go there. About our next steps. And so one of the things that we want to do is really encourage everyone to join us for these next pieces. And also we are, we're recruiting people to start thinking about things that we can do even throughout the school year, the 2020-2021 school year. And so we're putting a call out there. So my White Fragility Book Club people, would you mind just giving a little plug? Or I can.
Yeah, so it's gonna happen next month, July 8th, I believe.
Yes.
Oh, I made the flyer today. Okay, yes, July 8th, same time, 5 p.m. And we posted, we're going to release the flyer digitally. Probably, it's ready to go, Dr. Jess, I was gonna send it to you. But yeah, and on there, please explore, feel free to explore the links that are sort of, there's a guide for reading and a bunch of other links to podcasts where the author, where D'Angelo actually speaks to both current events and topics around the book. So not only reading the book, but also exploring some of those links are highly recommended. And yes, we look forward to some powerful conversations around these timely topics.
And I'll be sending out the information tomorrow based on the RSVP for the event. So if you do want to RSVP, then and you haven't already, then please go to the Google form at the bottom, and I put a QR code so you could go right there as well. Somebody want to talk about the Artistic Expression Salon? Dilemmas on that one too, but go ahead.
I was just gonna say, oh, well, so that's also coming soon. It will be a call for art. And if you're feeling, like Dr. Lathan mentioned, he actually is going to be presenting a piece, and it could be poetry, it could be artwork. We can do it gallery style where you can submit an image and we can post it, and I'm happy to work with Adan, who's helping me curate, and anybody else who wants to participate. So feel free to send in any of your creative expressions, and we'll be happy to showcase that as at the same time that the symposium is going on, which I believe is in July
20th. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we have an example here. One of our PhD students actually wrote a poem. And so that will be one of the things that we'll be presenting at that.
Right.
Well.
And I will just add that we also still reaching out to community. So we are looking for outside artists to come in and be a part and share their work. They can do an image and then have them on the Zoom call and then allow them to elaborate on the meaning. So those are also things to think about, and we open it up to the community. Okay.
All right, and then we also just wanted to also put a plug in for the resource list that we've been putting together. If you do have additional resources, feel free to share those, and we will add it to the list. I've seen a lot of good things coming up in the chat box, and so we've kind of organized it to the best of our ability. A lot of the things can overlap between educators and activists, so just keeping that in mind. And yeah, and then our final piece is just our closing. We know we went over in time, and most of y'all are still with us, so I want to say thank you. And I will then hand it off to Dr. Quezada.
Yeah, thank you. This was great. There's so many powerful insights, and like what I took is a sense of responsibility from all of us. Making that commitment to, again, not only for this event, but for events in the summer as well as the 2021 school year. And I know in our group, and I think it was shared through the other groups, the multiplicity of cross-discipline or cross-departmental participation from clinical mental health to DLS. I know there are a couple of doctoral students from the Department of Leadership Studies, obviously as well from our department as well. including students. So again, thank you very much for staying with us close to the 2 hours. So thank you, all of you. And again, to Dr. Lathan and Dr. Jess for facilitating, and the support of the Dean's office with Associate Dean Dr. Spencer, who will be in her new role as interim dean July 1st. So we look forward to that as well. So again, thank you very much. And I'm sure this is not the last time we will be together.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. Well, with that being said, I think I'm all set. Everyone else?
Right. Thank you so
All
much.
right. Thank you again. This has been a phenomenal event. This is going to go down in history, and we're going to continue to make history. Okay. So this is not the only historical moment at USD. We have a lot more historical moments to make. All right. Be well. Thank you all. Bye.
Very exciting. Congratulations, everyone.
Yes.
Wonderful event.
Beautiful. Thank you so much.
The students, I'm trying to see who is still on here. Aisha, I see Maisha and Mario, and I see Serena, and Raqueta. Thank you so much. You guys are phenomenal. Really, you guys are like, you make us so proud.
Yeah.
Wow.
I'm very much. My heart is full, and thank you. Thank you for all that work. The sun is hit. Anyway, thank you all.
Not a problem.
It was a packed house, and I don't know, I don't have the words. Serena, you and I have been together most of the day, and it's just gotten better and better, as we've gone along. This was really powerful.
Yeah, I'm so very inspired by our students, our faculty. So appreciate Rebecca, you and Joseph taking on the lead with this work, and the heart that goes into this, and the meaning and purpose that is being found in more profound ways. I'm so inspired, and I'm really looking forward to working with the PhD group this fall.
They're wonderful, yeah.
And for a treat, I'm telling you. Guys through your paces, though, I'm telling you.
Phenomenal. And I know I'm going to be learning so much more from them. So just something that my heart's melted today, in so many ways. I thank you all so much.
Yeah.
Bless you all so much.
All right, so I will finish my job on this one with sending out the video and the slide deck. Thank you guys for putting that together as well. So,
is there anyone who can capture all these links that came in the chat?
When the chat, how the chat comes down, I'll send that out as well. But I'll try to add them to the resource list when I get a chance.
Oh, you were recording. Okay, I didn't know you were recording.
Yeah. Rebecca, you may want to curate the links, because all of the chat comes through.